Great, thank you so much for the kind introduction. Hi everybody, welcome to Friday at AWE. Thank you for joining us at this hour. We really appreciate you being here. My name is Dorrene Brown. I'm a product manager on Unity's Input and Interactions team.
And I am Dave Ruddell. I'm the engineering manager on the XR Input and Interactions team.
And we're here today to talk to you about the Unity Input or the Unity XR Interaction Toolkit. But first, let's spend a little bit of time talking about how we'll spend the next 20 minutes. We'll first talk about getting started with the XR Interaction Toolkit, what it is, why it's important to you, and how you can start using it for your next project. We'll then get hands-on with two demos, the first being a video of an application that takes advantage of the XR Interaction Toolkit, and the second being a live demo in the Unity editor showcasing that app and how the XR Interaction Toolkit makes the app really shine. We'll then talk about what's next, new features, upcoming release plans, and our overall roadmap guided by your feedback. So what is Unity's XR Interaction Toolkit? XRI, as we tend to refer to it, is a Unity-made and managed package that provides a high-level interaction system, giving creators a jumpstart on building interactive and intuitive AR and VR content. This includes things like a robust framework with components and APIs to handle a bulk of the primary boilerplate or groundwork needed for creating highly robust interactive content. All of this is done with a layer on top of input to deal with delivering actions and events to the interaction layer, bringing support for most XR devices that implement a Unity SDK, including OpenXR. We've also worked hard to expose input via both the legacy input manager and input system. But all of that is a whole lot of words to describe something that is, at its core, very visual. So let's take a look at an application that showcases the XR Interaction Toolkit. Each station we'll view here encompasses a specific bit of interaction that you'll see in the toolkit itself. You'll also see examples on how to leverage XRI to meet your specific needs. So let's get started. Whoop. Let's try that again. We'll play. Huh?
Almost got to the end there. All right, so you've seen what it's capable of. Now let's take a little bit of time to go into the details of what is included in XRI and how we've kind of architected it for developers. It's going to get a little technical. So to start off, as you can see from this stack image, the XRI toolkit sits right below the application layer, so your VR and AR applications. This is important to distinguish because you can see that it means you have to deal with very little of the remaining stack, such as interfacing with the XR SDKs or even lower level with the provider plugins or DLLs. Now you can still do that if you want to, but the goal is to let Unity abstract away the harder problems and let you get creating quicker and easier while maintaining the greatest platform reach for your content. So as you start to build your VR and AR applications and games, what core components are provided to you by XRI? To start with, there are a couple of convenience tools for creating the base objects for your content, namely the XR origin along with the XR controllers. So the XR origin provides you with the core camera, left-hand and right-hand tracking capabilities required to set up your general play area. The XR controllers that are created with that will depend on the input mechanism that you choose. So as Dorrene stated, we support both the legacy input manager and the new input system package. So as you can see, the action-based controllers are plumbed through the new input system. The device-based are plumbed through the legacy input manager. But keep in mind that if you plan to use OpenXR, these are currently only supported through our new input system package with the actions. Despite which model you end up using, the functionality remains the same, and the controller creates an abstraction layer on top of the specific devices, allowing you to use a more simplified input action such as select, activate, move, pressing on the UI, things like that. These actions are what then drive what happens with the interactions, which is kind of the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. So we describe kind of this model, and it's very common in the industry now to refer to it as interactors, interactables, things like that. So the first half is the interactors. So typically associated with the hand, it comes in 3 basic flavors. We have our direct interactors, which are used for near field interaction, such as grabbing, pushing, and then also the ray interactors for far field interactions, such as selecting things from a distance for interacting with, or specifically selecting UI elements. The third one we call our socket interactor, which allows you to place interactable objects into predefined socket locations, such as a key in a keyhole, like you saw, or a battery into a battery holder. The other half of the interaction model is the group of interactables, the things that we actually want to play with in the scene and have our users experience. So they're usually what we call our grab interactables. So anything we wish to grab, pick up, apply physics to are in that set of objects. We also use the interactables to define our teleport locations. So where are you actually going to teleport to in the scene? That way you can define where you want the users to go and where you don't want them to go, so that you have an expected experience for your users. And then, of course, controlling and mitigating all of these interactions is what we call our interaction manager. Kind of sits on the top, and this is kind of the main loop that goes through the interactors and interactables and sees if there's anything going on that it needs to be aware of and produces the interaction results. Changes the states at runtime and things like that. It's also in charge of filtering out the interactions based on what we call our interaction layer mask. And the layer mask is similar to, if you're familiar with the physics layers in Unity, the interaction layer mask allows you to filter specifically things that interact together and you don't want to interact together. So you might not want to grab a teleport zone and drag it across the level. You want it to only be used for teleportation, and same the other way around. You can also use it to filter out near and far interactions. So things that are up close you may want to interact with in a different way than things that are far away. So in addition to the base interaction components required to make interactive XR content, we've also provided some additional capabilities that we feel are absolutely necessary for most content that you wish to make. So this includes things like locomotion support. We have built-in support for teleportation, continuous movement and turn using like a thumbstick, as well as snap turning with customized angles for snapping, and of course like the snap turnaround for quick turnaround. On the interactors themselves, we've provided some simple haptic feedback mechanisms. So you have the ability to customize intensity, duration, for all of the different types of interactions that will happen. So if you're hovering over something, you might want a light bump of the controller. If you want to pick up something and you want it to be more intense, you can customize that. In addition to the haptics, we've also provided some visual feedback. This is simple things like reticles for when you're aiming at things in the scene, for teleportation, as well as hover events. So when you're picking up something that fits into like a socket, it will highlight blue to show you exactly how that's going to map to putting it in the socket. Also, UGUI support. So Unity has currently 2 different modes of doing UI. Right now, we only support the UGUI canvas, and we have customizations that allow you to support it for all the XR devices, as well as keyboard, mouse, and things like that. And then a new feature that we just added just last month is what we call our intention filtering. This is really interesting because it lets you customize and score how specific heuristics are used when selecting or hovering an object. We've included some basic filters for you to get started, such as head gaze, distance checking, and also how recently an object was selected. But it really lets you kind of gauge the intent of the user. If they're hovering their hand between 2 objects based on where they're looking or what they just last selected, it can better guide you to what they're actually trying to pick up. The system also allows you to customize your own intention filters. So based on your specific needs, you might have customized heuristics that you want to program into a custom filter, and that's totally doable. And the last thing is the comfort mode sample. So we've built a prefab that lets you just drag and drop it onto the camera. It's just a tunneling effect vignette. It's very common in most XR applications nowadays. And this one's wired to our locomotion providers that I talked about just a bit ago. So basically your tunnel vision goes in when you're moving and lets off when you're done. And that's fully customizable as well. You can set the ease in time, how big or small the actual aperture is, the color, all of that good stuff. And it can also be customized to your needs. So if you need something a little bit more magical in your experience, you're more than welcome to do that. And that's, to the last point, robust extensibility. The entire XRI toolkit was designed with creators in mind. So you have all these great visions of what you want to build. This is kind of a stepping stone to get you where you need to go. And we have great documentation describing how to extend all of our classes and build custom options. So if you're building for AR, you'll need to have the AR Foundation package in your project, and it interacts with the XRI toolkit in several key ways. For those who are not familiar with AR Foundation, this is a package that Unity provides that allows creators to build AR games and apps on top of the well-defined AR platforms such as AR Core for Android, ARKit for iOS, Windows Mixed Reality, and Magic Leap for the head-mounted AR devices. So what we've done with XRI and AR Foundation is that we've built an AR gesture system that allows you to map basically touchscreen events into gestures. And this allows you to place AR interactables or virtual objects into the real world as captured by the AR Foundation components. And then the AR gesture interactors and interactables that XRI provides allows you to translate other common gestures such as placing, selecting, translating, rotating, and scaling into object manipulation in your AR world space. And last but not least, we have AR annotations to tag information and to inform users about the various AR objects that are placed in your world. So many of these features of XRI and AR Foundation are actually showcased in Unity's AR Companion app that just released a couple months ago. It has many other benefits to AR developers beyond just a good showcase, so I highly encourage you to check it out if you're an AR developer. So now I'd like to take a little bit of time, jump over to the editor and kind of show you how things are wired up in Unity. All right. So here we have kind of the basic scene. This is the sample project that we showcased earlier. In your hierarchy here, you're going to have the complete setup. In the actual XRI toolkit, you get started with kind of a simple creation of this XR origin. If you start with the samples, you're going to have what we call our complete setup prefab, which you drop into your scene, and it gives you lots of interaction and stuff out of the box ready to go. It's got the interaction manager that I talked about, the event system for UI interaction, and our customized XR UI input module. And here you can see the different customizations for the input system, as well as the input manager. So this allows for you to be able to utilize both of them through this single input module. Next, on the origin itself, we have put all of our locomotion providers. So you can see here we have our snap turn provider, teleportation, continuous turn, all of that, alongside the character controller and controller driver, which are kind of the standard Unity controller, character controllers. Next piece is kind of the main camera. So this is pretty standard for any of the vanilla XR stuff that you would create. It's just got the track pose driver to control head movement. But underneath is the other prefab that I talked about, which is the tunneling vignette. And you can see here, here's the actual controller. Right now we've got it wired to both the dynamic move provider and our continuous turn. So this is going to actually create that tunneling effect when you're moving with the joystick or turning quickly. And to kind of show you what that looks like, let me see here. So in Editor, we built tools so that you can actually preview this, so you can see like what it's going to look like, change the different size. Let's see here. Let's move to this one. All right, so you can see live, you can adjust that. You can adjust things like color. So whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish with this comfort mode, there's lots of knobs and dials to adjust it to customize what you need. So I'll jump back to the kind of the last part of this complete setup, which is the hands. So in here we have the action-based controller that I talked about. This lets you map all of your input actions into, like I said, the select action, activate, UI press, things like that. Allows you to define which haptic devices you're talking to. And this is really where, the input system shines, because now I can go in here and look at, if you're familiar with the input system, this is just the simple action map, and you can map it to like a grip on your controller or trigger, things like that. So this is where the kind of the nitty-gritty of the input gets set up. But the nice thing is, once that's set, all of your interactions are now handled through interactors where it's not, you don't have to care about, is it, a MetaQuest controller, is it HoloLens, what am I interacting with? It's more of, what is it that I want the user to do? What is it that I want them to experience? So this is our direct interactor, and if you want to, wire up haptic events or things like that, you just set it and you're ready to go. In addition to the complete setup, I'll just show you a couple quick things of how we've wired up some stuff. So I'll fly through here. So you probably saw the blaster in the video, so we'll take a quick look at that. So as I said before, grab interactable. So using the direct interactor, you can go pick this up. We have an attach point, which is the handle, so you can define exactly where it's going to snap to the hand when you pick it up. And then additional to that is when you actually select the object or activate it, it will perform some action. So whatever you have set to activate, say it's the trigger, which is pretty common, it will set an animation for the trigger to fire, and it will actually launch a projectile. So really easy to set up. We're working on getting better about having no-code solutions, so developers or creators who aren't code savvy can actually jumpstart and get started on building their own interactive content. We've got about 6 minutes left. I'm going to cut back over, but hopefully, you found this useful. And as this launches in the next few months, I think it'll be really, really good to get some community feedback on what's missing or what they would like to see in future iterations. Let's see here. I wonder, can you switch back over? Can you switch back to the other slide deck?
Right, thanks Dave for the excellent overview of XRI and how it works in the Unity editor. Let's talk next about the future of XRI 2.0 and beyond. First, we're addressing feedback from our XRI 1.0 release. And thanks to each and every one of you in this room today who has used XRI and given us valuable feedback on how to move forward. Right now, we're looking at extensibility improvements, things like controller and interactor refactors to make it easier for you to customize XRI to your exact needs. We're also looking at our device simulator, how to make the keyboard and mouse UI a little bit more efficient in the UX. And we're also working on documentation and sample project updates such that it's even easier for you to get used to using XRI. On deck then becomes a more expanded feature set within XRI. Updated interactions, including dynamic attach points and multi-hand support, with multiple solver types for things like single and two-handed grab movement transformations. We're looking at locomotion updates, including teleporter directionality and a comfort mode vignette sample that we showcased in the application earlier. New and updated interactors, including a poke interactor. Thank you to everybody who has given us feedback. We are working on a poke interactor. As well as additional UI interaction improvements, things like updated customizations of input actions and input manager settings. I will note that some of the stuff on the screen today is available in our 2.1.0 pre-release package. The other features just mentioned will be available later on. We then look at our even more future-facing roadmap, where we go, how do we interact with features in XRI with more than just a controller, right? In addition to updates we're making to our controller and hand structures for more intuitive interactor implementations, we're also looking at implementing eye gaze and hand support. Things like gaze-based interactions, additional input for user intention filtering, and other interaction assistance for selection and throwing. So think something like I'm looking at a point in space and I can throw a ball and have my eye gaze help aim where the ball is going to go. Finally, we're looking at support for hand data and hand interactions. Right? How do we make hand tracking easier for you to take advantage of as a developer? And as we build these new features, we'll continue to update our samples and authoring templates such that it is always easy to take advantage of XRI. So how do you as a creator get started with XRI? Up here, this QR code will take you to a list of samples and documentation. Things like XRI docs and content, modules on Unity Learn that have step-by-step instructions on how to get started, as well as a link to our roadmap so you can see in real time what we're working on over at Unity. If you don't have a QR code scanner available, there is a Linktree URL at the bottom which you can use to go to the same place. All right, at this point, I think we're ready for Q&A. Thank you so much for the time. In the back? Yes.
Yeah, so in the demonstration you gave earlier, you said that you mentioned that this stuff was coming out in the next releasing in the next couple of months. What were some of the things that you showed in the demo, like in Unity, that were not out now that are going to be coming out in the next couple of months?
Here.
Yeah, so what you saw in the walkthrough and the editor right there, all of that is available right now. That's, you know, as Dorrene said, the 2.1.0 pre-1 release contains all of that stuff, including, you know, the comfort vignette sample. The actual samples themselves, we're planning to release that later this year, so that there's additional things on top of that, like 3D UI elements and things like that, that you can take advantage of it in your own projects. But most of what you saw, the base core functionality, is available now.
Okay, and just one follow-up. The one big limitation that I found in using XRI, not just XRI, but really any XR input system, is being able to have a more intuitive and better input to things like keyboards, for example. So is there any plans you guys have around, and I don't necessarily have a solution myself, but any plans around adding some kind of functionality to make it more intuitive to use spelling or to write letters or to do something that you would typically do with a keyboard?
So you're talking like an on-screen keyboard to be able
Yeah,
to type?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you that we have internal teams working on other design frameworks that have embedded keyboards and things like that. And when we go through these kind of exercises, a lot of that stuff gets percolated down into XRI as core features. So while I don't have an exact timeline on when that's available, it is something that we've heard a lot, and we are planning on releasing sometime in the near future.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.